Last year I made a video discussing level design in survival games and how bad the Isle maps, especially V3 at the time, were. Unfortunately for us, Evrima's Isla Spiro turned out to be even worse somehow, but on top of that, something is happening in the genre. Path of Titans is currently developing a completely new map named Gondwa. Beast of Bermuda is about to release Titania, their upcoming map that it's been in the works for over a year, and the Isle is following their endless trend of releasing new maps every 2 years with the leak of a new Evrima map named Isla Velada. Or Gateway, that doesn't matter. What's important here is the fact that all 3 major Dinosaur survival games are currently creating new maps for their titles. But why is that exactly? For ages people have been criticizing these games' maps, and with good reason. Level design is hard, really hard. Most times, good maps only visibly show a small portion of the work and thought that was put into them. Making maps is not about aesthetics, but all about placement and composition. But let's talk about specifics. There are 3 major complaints that are the most commonly mentioned in these games communities. The map is too big, the map lacks variety, and the map is hard to navigate. Before I continue though, I want everyone to keep in mind, if you enjoy these maps, no matter the reason, I'm not saying that you should dislike them or that you should feel bad for not disliking it. If you are having fun swimming through the rivers of Isla Spiro, if you like crossing the redwood forests of Bermuda, or if you just enjoy the relaxing atmosphere of Rival Shores Ocean, then don't let anyone tell you that you are wrong for that. We all like different things, and that fact should be respected. My purpose here is pointing out potential issues these games have in level design and suggest improvements so we can make the maps better so everyone can take most out of them. Alright, back to the point ahead. As I mentioned in the video made a year ago, Dinosaur survival games have an extra component that no other survival title has. Players having other players as a base requirement for their character, aka carnivores. Usually in this genre, everyone plays on the same playing field, having the same needs and capabilities, and the map is designed around that, having the resources necessary for the player to survive and progress scattered and placed in very specific spots, but that is done in a way that influences people to search and fight for said resources. In games like the Isle or Path, however, the map needs to be made so it influences people to search other people, since for the most part carnivores require herbivores to feed, completely changing the loop of the game. Since one of the base resources is now mobile, the map must be designed so players meet each other much more frequently to increase carnivores' chances of fulfilling their requirements. This problem is the core of 2 out of the 3 issues previously mentioned: the map size and navigation. Size is not necessarily the problem, but rather the size/population ratio. Ventura, Isla Spiro, and Rival Shores all share the same flaw. They are too big for the amount of people on any given server, which is usually 100 by default. Servers are usually kept at this number due to technical limitations. The technology to host up to 1000 people is extraordinarily expensive for developers, let alone normal people like you and me that host community servers. Some try to push it up to 200 players, but the higher the number goes, the more issues the server has, like latency, desyncs, or even crashes. And even then, the highest number that I ever saw on a server was when Isla Nicta tried using a supercomputer to host 500 people in V3 for 30 minutes before the server crashed. So trying to boost the player numbers won't fix it. Therefore, the only real solution at the moment is decreasing the map size. How small the maps need to be will depend on the design philosophy of the game itself. If the developer's vision is to have a more isolated experience to captivate fear and scarcity, then the map needs to be larger than a game focused on combat or socialization. Keeping a balance between all these parameters is extremely complicated and time-consuming, so pre-planning and having a laser-focused objective for the map's purpose and layout is crucial for a well-designed level. While creating a survival map, at its core there's a certain number of areas named hotspots. These locations will exist no matter what. They will be formed either by the developers or by the players themselves. What we want is to deliberately influence people to travel through these locations, increasing the chances of encounters. But how do we do that? Developers often underestimate the community's intelligence. Gamers are smart, but most importantly, they are efficiency seekers. They will always, sometimes even unconsciously, metagame the game. They will study everything about it and search for the most efficient way to do everything. Finding the best spots to grow, finding the fastest routes to specific locations, the best way to grow your dinosaur, what dinosaur is the best in X category. This is why guides, tutorials and tier lists exist. People crave for this kind of information. But why is that relevant here? While hotspots are the most important component of the map itself, the most demanding and complex part while designing a level is establishing connections and routes to and between said locations. If the developers do a suboptimal job at creating what we call lanes, newcomers will rapidly feel lost in the world with zero concrete guidance, and more veteran players will be unappealed to travel between zones, since the map more often than not works against the player's most efficient route with its layout. Obviously, with a much smaller map the issue won't be as prevalent, but by introducing well-defined and optimized lanes, the web created by the developers will be much more beginner-friendly to new players, as well as controlling the population flow throughout the entire map, which then can be used to place specific areas of interest, props, story elements, events, or pretty much anything that the game in question requires for the player to see or experience. Some of you might be questioning though, what about the biomes? Variety is another core part of this genre. The maps in these games are the community's playground, their sandbox. People will explore it dozens if not hundreds of times, so if your entire level is a sea of trees that look mostly the same, that will get old pretty quick. Fortunately for us, this problem is the simplest to solve. If the map lacks variety, just add more.
The prophecy is true.
Okay, it is simple, but it's not that simple. Biomes are usually added simply for either immersion or variety for variety's sake. However, they have the potential to be much more than that. These distinct regions can not only differ visually, but also mechanically. Adding unique features to each biome the map possesses, if done well, can promote exploration, slowly teach newcomers the different mechanics the game has, or even affect how players interact with the game as a whole. And adding hotspots on each biome would form, in theory, an endless mechanical dynamic that can complement a diverse cast of playstyles, or in other words, make the game more fun. Now, choosing the biomes themselves and how they connect is also important. This heavily depends on the game in question. However, the worst thing a dev team can do is create boring, basic, vulgar regions that add nothing to the title's theme, narrative, or experience. Keep in mind that creating a realistic map does not mean any of this. Games set in realistic universes or that require realistic landscapes is completely fine and doesn't affect the gameplay in any way. It only starts being an issue when the biomes don't fit the game's theme, make no geological sense, or simply are poorly conceptualized. Having a tropical jungle switch to a freezing cold Nordic forest in the space of just 20 feet is nonsensical and makes the map look cheap. The transitions between biomes need to be logical and look natural, especially if immersion is the biome's main purpose to begin with. But fear not. The 3 upcoming maps for our favorite games seem to have learned from the previous mistakes, and show very promising changes, especially Gondwa. Every time each one gets released, I will consider reviewing it. What do you guys think? Let me know if you would like to watch that type of content in the comments below. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters for supporting the channel and the content I create. If you want to join the ranks, the link will be in the description. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down below, join our Discord server for memes and Billy Nerd stuff, and I hope to see you next week.